wealth is more than money. It's legacy, wisdom, and the alignment of purpose. Welcome to Crown and Keys, where we unlock the secrets to generational wealth, passive income, and financial freedom through real estate, tax strategy, and personal development. I'm your host, Cynthia Spirlin, your guide on this journey. With over 20 years in real estate investing, a Juris Doctorate, and the passion for aligning wealth with purpose, I bring you conversations with the most brilliant minds in real estate, finance, and entrepreneurship. Together, we'll uncover the strategies that turn income into impact and assets into legacy. Your wealth isn't just for you, it's for the generations that follow. So grab your keys, adjust your crown, and let's build something that lasts. Well, welcome to our episode today. I am so excited to have our guest here to share his journey into creating wealth for himself and to leave a legacy and his career path in finance. Jeff Chisum is here from Texas. Um, he serves the entire United States. So anyone, wherever you are, you're in the right place today to learn from one of the top sources of money for real estate investing and for your personal home. So welcome, Jeff, today. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here to share and, hopefully for at least one people, hopefully more, we'll be able to share some information that will lead people to places that they wouldn't have been able to go otherwise. So that's hopefully what we'll be able to accomplish here today.
Yeah. I think that from what we've talked about earlier, that your journey has kind of been a faith, just intentional, trusting the path that you're going in the right direction from your career starting in 2008. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so like I was explaining earlier, when you asked me about my venture or my journey in the mortgage business, I was really looking for a job back in 2008. I had been laid from a previous company, a previous employer, and ran into a guy that was a manager for Consumer Direct with City Mortgage. He said, "Hey, fill out an application." So at the interview, they were asking about my experience, and I told them I know what a mortgage is. I have one. I've been through the process, but really in that environment, it was about your ability to learn, to communicate, to educate. So yeah, started out in 2008 in Consumer Direct. So that would be a big call center where, people are calling in to the 1-800 number. We're reaching out to current clients. But that was also the year of the crash. So, within months of going out on the within months of going out on the sales floor, it turned into low appraisal, and then every third deal was a low appraisal, and then it was every other, and then it was every deal, and then it was couldn't get people out of their adjustable rates because they owed more than what their home was worth. And yeah, so it was a challenging time, but it's a lot of like a lot of things that we go in life, those things that are challenging, that they teach us lessons. We hopefully will be better because of them on the other side. And I would say this would be the case with me. And so yeah, it was at the very least very interesting entry into the mortgage business.
So now you've been in the business for several years. What do you think is the thread of your success year after year?
Well, and I tell people all the time, we've got a simple formula, always do the right thing, and always do the best thing for your client.
Right.
So we're not, never a thought of driven by pushing someone in a certain product because
Mhm.
I'm going to do better, or, giving people information that is ultimately going to benefit me if they do it. So, we always do the right thing. And then, communication. I think that we've created systems in my business amongst my team where we're really easy to communicate with, and ultimately, if you can reduce the level of frustration
Hmm.
of the process and just give people clear and concise next steps,
Right.
and you're easy to communicate with. And I'm a pretty simple person. I like to think that I am, and so I try to keep things as simple as possible. And yeah, that's been our bread and butter, is always do the right thing, and make sure that the lines of communication are easy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely important to have the set the right expectations so that everyone can be on the same page. I think that's important. 100%.
Oh, and the other thing would be education. You
Yeah,
and I talked
yeah.
about that earlier. I really found that, and it probably goes back to my I wouldn't say background, but I've coached a lot of youth sports.
Okay.
And when I was in college, I had that idea that I wanted to be a coach. And then I met my wife, and she was wanting to become a social worker. So in my mind, that economy of us coming together, me being a coach, her being a social worker,
Yeah.
didn't necessarily make sense. So that's when I decided maybe I should find a way to make more money. But so I really think that in my kind of DNA, I'm a teacher at heart, a coach at heart. So that's kind of carried through my mortgage business, where as I've developed my business and developed different lanes for business, really at the root of everything that I've done is to educate, whether it's realtors or clients, investors, people looking to buy real estate with the right information. So yeah, education has also been a key element.
Sure, that's vital. So, what inspired you to start your journey in wealth building? Was it through your career that opened your eyes to that, or was it a coach or a particular mentor?
Well, I mean, I definitely would say Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, just that idea of building assets, um, and just kind of that paradigm shift. Even though I'd been around mortgages for a long time, I never really had kind of this deep desire to invest in real estate. But as we found ourselves in a place where we were very blessed, we were beyond a stage in life where we're just trying to figure out how to make the ends meet. We wanted to be a good stewards with that. So I researched the stock market. I researched different investment lanes, and to me, and it kind of goes back to maybe that thought that I'm just try to keep things as simple as possible. I
Mhm.
just like that idea of real estate.
Yeah.
Something that you could touch, something that was
Mhm.
tangible, and then if it burned down, you're
It's
typically
true.
going to have, yeah, you're gonna have an insurance policy
Mm.
to,
You're covered.
to cover it. Yeah, and you lose that money in the stock market, which I didn't understand all those games that were being played, market manipulation, Enron, all those kind of nightmare stories come to mind. Real estate just made the most sense to me. So we looked at long-term rentals locally. Really felt like I wanted a new build. If I went that direction, came to find that a lot of developers, new builders will not sell to investors in new developments.
Mhm.
At least that was very prevalent in the Dallas Fort Worth market where we live.
Okay.
So then, you know, um, our preferred methods of accommodations, because we have a larger family, were short-term rentals, Airbnbs. So, we were looking for one in the area that my son had moved out to in Arkansas, found this beautiful place on this lake in the Ozarks and fell in love with the area. Did more research about real estate prices and found that it was a lot more reasonable there in North Central Arkansas than a lot of the other places or most places in the United States. So we didn't feel like we were overextending ourselves if we were to move forward in that market. And so, started looking at properties and then came back to some information that I had come across. So this was all back in 2020. Uh, I had come across an email probably 4 or 5 years previous to that that talked about the second home occupancy loan and some changes that Fannie and Freddie were making so that people that were buying these properties and these vacation homes and renting them out on a short term basis, they didn't feel like they were operating in a gray area. So Fannie and Freddie made some policy changes so that they were friendly to people utilizing these as short-term rentals. So, that came along with, the 10% aspect of the second home occupancy loan, just made it a lot more feasible for us. So, yeah, we made that move on that first one, and uh, it has ended up being a really good move, and we purchased a second one shortly after.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so, how have those worked out for you? Has managing, you live in Texas and the properties are there. So, how's the management been from a distance? Because many times I talk to people and they're reluctant to buy out of state properties.
Yeah, and in this day and age that we live in, where it's so easy to network with people in other parts of the country, that really made it easy. So, for instance, the handyman that we use, I connected with through a local Facebook group where I just posted that I was looking for someone, and um, there's a lot of retirees in the community where our lake house is, and a lady answered that, "Hey, we just moved down from Michigan. I'm really looking for something for my husband to do in his spare time. Uh, I'm gonna volunteer him for, the task." So
Oh,
we ended
wow.
up, meeting him in person when we were there at one point. But, it ended up he was a master builder from Michigan. And so
Wow.
now yeah, my handyman, used to build custom homes. So
Wow.
and then,
That's
we've
working the
got
net.
yeah, that's exactly right. And, we ran into a couple. I originally had a property management company that was specific to that area that was managing the property.
Hmm.
I didn't feel like they were doing a great job. We ran into a couple while we were up there and just got into a discussion with them, and just really sharp guy. And he shared with me that he was trying to build a co-hosting business. And so, yeah, we, took a gamble on him kind of taking that over for us. And it's, been great, very, very ambitious guy that's willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done, and he's done very well for us. So yeah, it in the world that we live in through social media and this electronic age,
Yeah.
it's really easy to connect with good people and be able to verify that they're good people.
Hmm.
So it's not, just kind of scammers running around saying I'll do this.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
can kind of check out who they are and who they're working with.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's been easy.
Now, you mentioned that you read a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. How does personal development play a role in your transition through, your building the legacy through these real estate properties?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that we have to be constantly learning and constantly evolving to
Hmm.
get better. I think a tendency and maybe a message that we get in as we get older is that you should be taking it easier. To
Hmm.
me, I take the opposite approach. We need to be learning more
Right.
because we're facing new challenges, and building wealth is definitely one of those. So, learning different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things, learning from people that have gone before you and done well in areas that you're interested in, I think is huge. So I've seen that in my career. I've seen that in my personal life and, building wealth and my health. So definitely, right now in a stage of life where I want to find out because I have an 11-year-old. So, he, just like my 25-year-old, got a younger version of me. Just because I'm older doesn't mean that my 11-year-old should get a lesser version of me. So, just making sure that I'm operating at a optimal level physically, and it all goes around learning and continuing to press in to others that know more than me.
Do you have a favorite author in that area that you turn to or follow a blog that you could share?
For health or
Yeah,
um somebody there's so many good these days. I'm listening to there's a lot of good podcasts of um holistic doctors, uh, uh people that are longevity experts,
yeah,
but recently I've been listening to Genius. Oh, I've got it pulled up here. Hope it doesn't pop up. The Genius Life.
the
So
genius.
yeah, he's been around for a while, and that I think today he put out or recently put out like 400 and his 460th episode. So he's big in that arena. There's several doctors that also have podcasts, so you can catch anything from cardiologists to nutritionists. We really live in a great day and age where we just have
Yeah.
so much access to good people and good information.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way. If health is wealth. So each day I start my day with a video, YouTube short at the minimum on some aspect of understanding health and nutrition and how different trace elements and minerals and things play a part in our well-being. And so, I've been working with the doctor, and I definitely agree that it's important to have that as a high priority to maintain your health because if I mean, some heart transplants or different, healthy, operations like that can be, $1 million, um, and the medications and all of that. So I think it's important to maintain our health as we pursue wealth in whatever way that is defined for us. But that's really, really key. And I love that you like to read and listen to the podcast and use that to grow and show up better for your family. Yeah, that's
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if we're building all this and we have all this around us, if we can't enjoy it because we're not in a good position physically, then gosh, what a disappointment. So yeah, I've got big dreams and aspirations for being in my 60s, 70s, and 80s and how I will operate physically. But yeah, and I drew a blank a little bit on names, but Gary Brecka is another one that I really like to listen to. The Ultimate Human, Dr. Mark Hyman. So yeah, and something that I've done recently through Life Force, no affiliation, but I get quarterly blood tests, and then those are gone over with a medical profession to go over the results and the things that I can be working on to improve those numbers. So right now, I'm 50 years old uh, with a medical age of 45
oh, that's
according to their yeah,
awesome.
according to their results. I was happy to see that number was lower than
Sure.
my chronological age, but
Right.
hey, now I've got something because I've always been a to me an overcomer. So I grew up playing youth sports. I was always the smallest guy, and so I kind of have that overcomer mentality.
Mhm.
So it's that I love when people tell me that I can't do something,
Yeah.
or
And
I'm challenged with something. Yeah, so that's motivating. And to go along with the, what are you seeking out to educate yourself? I'm a big believer that if you're not moving forward, then you're moving backwards. It's
Mhm.
not too many places in life where you can just
Post.
coast, and it just doesn't happen. You're more than likely going to go backwards.
Yeah. Well, I admire that you're taking those steps to be in control of your health narrative. And I've done the same thing. I sat with my doctor um, in January, and we went through all the pages and pages of the results from this different blood work. And I was really shocked because I considered myself healthy, but I
Hmm.
hadn't had an in-depth review like that. And when I saw the numbers and the metrics, I said, okay, that's time for a change. And so I'm really pleased that when you take one step, your body responds so quickly into moving toward health. And so it's engaging. Like this morning, I had to take a short drive and drop off a rental car, and I decided to walk back. I could have gotten a lift, but I said, no, let's get some steps in. So every day, it's just adding that as a top of mind that, health is just as much important as anything else in life. Yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah,
and the things that we track are the things that, and that's a great example of the things that we track are the things that we're going to see progress in. So knowing your numbers and your blood work,
yeah.
having the Fitbit on or whatever to measure your steps. So it's
Sure.
not, I know I should take steps, I'm taking steps, but you actually have a step goal and you know what that looks like throughout the day. So that's great. And what that reminds me of is so many of my clients that just don't know what their position is to be able to invest in real estate.
Mm.
um, and I tell people all the time, just go through the pre-approval process, because at least you're going to know, and you may
Basic.
be surprised that you're in a better position than you even knew. And so, that's been one of the things with the 10% down second home occupancy loan that, we've been helping hundreds of people with invest in this vacation rental asset class that, they didn't realize that, hey, I only need 10% and I'm in a lot better position than I even knew,
Hmm.
because I've taken these steps to move forward and find out where I stand, that I can actually go and do this.
Well, what are the price ranges of a typical vacation home that you've seen in the market in Arkansas?
Oh gosh, it's gone up since we bought, but really, and I would say not only in Arkansas, but as a nationwide average, because people think vacation home, they think, $1 million property. It's got to be this, extravagant luxurious property. And
Hmm.
my average deal is around 550,000.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not multi-million-dollar vacation homes that the average person is investing in. It's going to be the property that's right around 550,000.
Okay. All right. And so I know I work with a group, it's Tax Lien Mastermind, and we in the past have gone on field trips to buy property. And one of the my clients bought a property and through the tax lien process in Arizona near Lake Havasu. And that was a really great thing because the we talk about the exit strategy. And so in that particular case, it was for her, it was creating a short-term rental in that area, and it just made sense is because of the attraction to the lake and everything. It's worked out really well for her. So I can definitely see the benefits of the vacation home. I didn't know that there was a loan in that regard. So that would be really interesting to share. How do you get that information out to people? Do you have work with investors, or do you promote that that funding option, or how do you do that?
Yeah, it's interesting, as far as the how this has all evolved into being just 100% of my business. So 100% of my business these days is working with investors. So I'm not really doing local deals anymore.
Wow.
Used to be the king of down payment assistance here locally. And then, once we bought that first property, and then I became a part of different networking groups, mainly through social media, just came across coaches that um, had these investor groups that they didn't know the information either. It was new to them, and so became a resource for a lot of these different groups to where I became the educator and just a natural fit. So yeah, it's really come through being on podcast interviews, part of different groups. I've gone to live events and presented, but even to this day, we see, or I see, the opportunity to get the word out through different avenues, because people tell me, sometimes on a daily basis, but definitely on a weekly basis, Jeff, I wish I would have run into you a lot sooner, because I would have been able to take action a lot sooner, because I didn't know that this, 10% down second home occupancy loan existed. And for some people, they've already bought a property, and for those, a lot of times I will get, I wish I would have ran into you sooner, because I would have much rather put down 10% than 20%, which is what my mortgage person told me.
Yeah,
And so we see that a lot of times where, they go to their, I am generalist, their generalist loan officer.
sure,
So
sure.
that's going to be, the person that typically, for the most part, they're doing local deals.
Mhm.
They don't have a lot of experience dealing with investors. So when they have someone come and tell them, I want to buy an investment property, they're going to go directly to an investment
Under,
property
yeah.
loan. The minimum down payment is 20. Well, but it just asks the questions like, okay, I see that you live in, Las Vegas, and you're buying a property in Florida. Is that a place that you're going to go on vacation? You're going to stay in this home? And
Mhm.
if, the answer is yes, yeah, we like to go to, 30A, or, the Panhandle, of Florida, and we like vacation. And we've now just decided, we've been staying in these Airbnbs. Why don't we buy our own? Um, if they would have asked those questions, then it would have led to, well, that's, if you plan on occupying the property at some point uh, during that first year, then that's the second home occupancy loan. You only have to put down 10%, not 20%, and your interest rate's going to be lower than you would get on an investment property. So, yeah, education has been a big opportunity for us. And yeah, there's a lot of people that wish they would have had this information a long time ago.
Well, what other qualifications, how much time do you have to spend there that first year to qualify beyond the the 10% down?
Yeah, so there is no set amount of days, and
Oh.
that's been one of the big opportunities,
Mhm.
to educate people on the nuances of the policy. So there's no specified amount of days. The gist of it is that your intention has to be that you're going to occupy the property at some point during that first year.
Oh,
That's the
only the
actual.
first year? You don't know
uh,
come in beyond that?
Yeah, you're released from those occupancy requirements after the first year. So when
Oh.
we talk about exit strategy, or, in the case where, I shouldn't say exit strategy, but like your plan B, if the short-term rental doesn't work,
Mhm.
then that second year, if you decide that there's a bigger market for long-term
Yeah, you could rent
renters,
it out year
yeah,
round
yeah,
or
that's
long
exactly right.
term,
You could
6
lock
months
in a
or
tenant.
so. What about, how many of those loans can you do? If you buy it as a couple, are you limited to one, or would a couple go, oh, I'm going to do it with my like use my 401k, solo 401k to invest here, and I'm going to use my self-directed IRA to invest in a second. How can you maximize that product?
So you just presented the opportunity for me to share about three or four very important things. But yeah, because I just had this conversation with a client yesterday on a consultation call. Because a lot of people think, well, I can only have one second home. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make sense that, I have multiple second homes, therefore I can only use the product once. And I told her, you know, okay, let's think in a mindset where we're not going to limit ourselves. Let's think about the ultra wealthy. Think about someone that you might perceive as a billionaire,
Yeah.
and where they would have, yeah, professional athlete that has
Right.
unlimited resources. They
True.
have a place in Vail, and they have a place in Park Cities. They have a place in, name the exotic location or the vacation spot. They have a home there that they had travel.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why anyone else couldn't duplicate that same portfolio of lifestyle assets.
Okay.
Using the 10% down second home occupancy loan, because you can have up to 10 mortgages in your name, and there's nothing to say that all 10 of those weren't originated with the 10% down second home occupancy loan.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. You can have up to 10 mortgages in your individual names. And then kind of next level would be, let's say you had a husband and a wife that were dual income earners.
Yes.
Uh, there's another common strategy where they would duplicate their efforts to where potentially, they could do 20 mortgages in their name. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the limiting factor is typically going to be debt to income ratio at some point, because you can't use the income from the proposed property towards qualifying income. So on the second home occupancy loan, because it's owner occupied, you can't use the projected rental income to
Okay.
use towards your qualifying income.
Mm-hmm.
So for most people, they're going to run up against the debt to income ratio
Sure.
ceiling,
Okay.
where maybe you have to slow down your scaling to where your income, your documentable income from the property that you purchase now can be used towards qualifying,
Okay.
which a lot of people don't know what that is. But short-term rental income you can use after 1 year of it being on your tax return if it's under Schedule E income.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So that's a great tax strategy thrown right in there too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's one of the big draws to the short-term rental assets is the tax loophole.
Mm,
So I'm not a CPA, I'm not a financial
right.
planner,
I'm not giving
but
financial advice.
I'm not giving financial advice. I'll tell
Yeah.
you everything that you want to about the finance of it, but it's easier to qualify for participation on a short-term rental than it is a long-term rental.
Oh,
So that is one of the yeah, that is one of the and maybe you can have a CPA that specializes in working with short-term rental investors to, further dive into that, but definitely, something that you want to be aware of, something that, you want to do your research on to find
yeah.
out about that, because, there's the cash flow aspect of it, there's the appreciation, but a lot of people don't know about the tax benefits
Right.
associated with short-term rental, and they are easier to qualify for than owning a long-term rental. The
Mm,
other thing that I don't want to forget about is your question about the solo 401k, the
yeah.
self-directed IRA,
Yeah.
because that's how I purchased our second property.
Mm-hmm.
Is I had a bunch of 401k money floating out there from
Sure.
prior employers,
Mm-hmm.
and I had consolidated it into a self-directed IRA.
I love it.
So yeah, that's how we bought our second property. Is I combined uh, the money from that self-directed IRA with a non-recourse loan.
Mm,
So I don't I don't do that type of lending,
Yes.
uh, but there are entities out there, banks that do the non-recourse loans,
Right.
because that loan is in the name of my 401k account,
Mm,
and the property is held by my 401k account. So I don't personally own that one.
mm,
The 401k does that. But in my case, because I was doing a short-term rental, I was doing it in rural Arkansas. I was required to put down 50%. So 50% of the acquisition cost came from my 401k. The other one came from the self-directed IRA. So, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier when we were looking at ways to invest our money. I liked real estate, something I could put my hands on. If it burned down, there was an insurance policy to replace it. And when my wife and I were discussing whether, we should use this money to buy real estate, she had some reservations, some hesitations, and we were talking about it, at date night one night. And we had already seen this property. We had already seen that it had a 10-year history as a short-term rental.
mm.
We knew it performed really well, and
Wow.
they actually had to take it off the market because we saw it when we bought the lake house, and then we decided, it's in the middle of a golf course, not a place that, the family wanted to hang out, but they had a 10-year history of these golfers wanting to hang out there.
Mm,
But and so a great investment property. They ended up having to take it off the market because it was so hard to show because it was booked so much.
wow.
So we came back almost a year later. We had this money just sitting there, not doing anything in this self-directed IRA. And at date night, I'm talking to my wife about it, and I was like, we really should go back and see if that golf course cabin is on the market. Did it sell? And she had her reservations. And then the next day, and I told her, I don't trust the stock market, all that good stuff. And then the next day is when all the Reddit and GameStop stuff happened.
Wow.
And it was all over social media. And I said, that's what I'm talking about, the market manipulation, the
Mm,
games that are played that we don't understand.
yeah.
And I just feel more comfortable having that money in real
Right.
estate. So yeah, that I don't do that type of lending, but I have executed on buying real estate through my self-directed IRA.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that's important. I encourage people to use those tools as well for tax strategy and for investing and deferring, the taxes on there. So that's really important. You've touched on a lot of things. It's been such a valuable conversation. And I'm really, really excited for this episode to appear so people can learn more about the this product because it's a real game changer. Now, as far as age, is there any limitation on age? Because I have people that actually have minors or just barely, they're still in college, but they have a self-directed IRA as well, early adopted concept. Can they invest? Do you need to be 18 or 21? What's the rule about that?
To be able to use the self-directed IRA with a non-recourse loan.
No, no, to use it to do you it to so the second home requires that you have a first home, right? You can't get that.
Oh, no, that's a good question. You don't actually.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, so you don't have to own your primary residence to be able to utilize the 10% down second home occupancy loan.
That's crazy
Um,
because it would kind of, you would think, you'd assume based on the title that of the name of the product that you'd have a first home.
right, right. Yeah, and that's kind of the generalization or the assumption is that if someone has a primary residence or something that they claim as their primary residence, that they own or they're required to own that property, and that's not the case. So, yeah, we have people in California can't afford to buy
Mm,
in California, so they're renting, and
hmm.
then that's their primary residence. It's what's on
Yeah.
their driver's license, their tax
Okay.
return, and
Yeah.
then they want to use the second home occupancy loan to go and buy in somewhere, more affordable, like North Central Arkansas, where they can buy a vacation home.
Mm-hmm.
vacation rentals. So that's a common scenario. Now, I'll tell you, if you've got part of your audience with college kids, the biggest, and I wish I could get this word out to more people.
Tell
The
us, tell us,
biggest,
tell us.
yeah, the biggest policy change that I've seen maybe in my career, so
Mhm.
since 2008, is what Fannie Mae just came out with last October, which they changed the down payment requirement on multifamily from 20% to 5%.
What?
Uh, yeah, that's going to be on a primary residence. So, you you this there's a bunch of different scenarios, but I mean,
Yeah.
at my age, I probably would not go back and buy a 4-unit property and occupy one of those for a year. It's
Mm.
just not in the cards for me, more than likely. Never say never, but I don't see that happening. I would see that happening for someone in their early 20s.
Yes.
So, you know, there's no there's not too many ways that I could see setting up your young adult child up for legacy wealth
Mm.
than helping them buy a multi-family
Yes.
property and
Yes.
only having to put 5% down. So,
Love it.
the question is, how do I do that with my college kid?
Yeah.
They don't have a job. Well, what that looks like is you go on as a non-occupant co-borrower. So
Okay.
you're basically going to qualify for the loan. Now, the nice thing about this is those other 3 units that you're not going to occupy, they
Mm-hmm.
can take market rents and
Mm-hmm.
use up to 70% of that projected income
Fab.
towards qualifying.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
Y-
I love it. I love it. This is like
Yeah,
gold.
and and then it's the same as the second occupancy loan. Your commitment to occupy that property as a primary residence is for only for a year.
Right.
So,
See.
maybe you do that when, their sophomore year in college. You buy a 4-unit property in
Mhm.
the city where they're going to college. You rent
Yeah.
those other 3 out to students.
Mm-hmm.
They live in it for 3 years. They're ready to go out and get a job. Well, okay, we go out and do it again, or maybe they've graduated from college. They're looking for their first home.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, they could live in it for a year, go do it 3 more times. By the time they're 30 years old, they own 3 or 4 multi-unit properties,
That's
and they're
yes strategy.
yeah, well, and it goes back to, you know, I the more, what was your phrase? Knowledge is,
King.
well, I think you said not
It's
power.
really it's generational wealth that passing to teach that to your child and
Yeah,
position them not after you pass away. We can do this while we're alive and create these opportunities for them, just sharing that. I talk to people that are doing estate planning and they say, I don't think my kid's ready to be the trustee or the executor over my estate. Well, they're not going to be ready if you don't train them and show
right.
them how to do these things and slowly implant these ideas in them. And so it's critical when they're going to college to have these opportunities. And so, but I didn't even know about such a program. So this is fabulous, fabulous information. It's not just a strategy, but you can actually implement this. And like you said, the first year, maybe not a great idea. There's a lot of things that happen the first year where they want the child to live in the dormitory on campus, but the second year there's more options available to live, outside of the campus. So I think that's great. And when you think about the rent that you pay over, my daughter was in Boston for 5 years because Northeastern has a 5-year program. And so the
Mhm.
first year she lived in the dormitory, and then the next 4 years she lived off site. And so, I was really conscious of the budget, and I said, okay, well, so the second year she lived with 8 roommates in this huge house with many rooms, and it was
Mm-hmm.
$700 a month. And then she's like, "Oh, Mom, I'm so tired of that." So then I said, "Oh, please, please, please don't go off the rails. Remember, we have a budget."
Yeah.
And like the only thing I could find that I liked was 1,400 a month.
Mm.
That,
Yeah.
so imagine for 3 years, the middler year they call it, then junior and senior, $1,400 a month. So what could that be in a rental of a owner with, what we just described, that four
Yeah.
unit multi-family dwelling? That changes everything. Plus, even if you say, well, like my daughter did. I don't want to live in Boston anymore. Okay, great. So you can sell it, and there's been appreciation and all those things. So it's going to be profitable either way you go. Yeah, I
Well,
love.
and yeah, where can you buy that level of asset with that little bit of an
I
investment?
know,
I mean,
5%.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Your phone's got to be ringing off the hook after when when this comes out because people don't know. That's phenomenal. And I'm going to tell all my friends that have kids in this class that about this opportunity. And also younger people, be prepared. When you think about preparing your kid for college with the SAT and all of those things, which colleges, they go visit the colleges, all of that. Do some house hunting when you're work with the realtor, work with someone like Jeff. So you can see what are your options when you look at housing in that area too.
yeah, don't just look at rent, start looking at real estate prices,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
price of real estate. But you're exactly right. We're all kind of think we should be on this kind of trajectory of, you go to college, you get out, you get
Mhm.
your first job, buy your first house. Well, what if we started thinking of it in terms of how do we start building our wealth right out of the gate through
Yeah.
real estate? And it looks like, okay, so I buy a multifamily, and I really would like to put something together that uh, kind of charts the course for how to become a you know multi-million dollar real estate investor by the time that you're 30. But
Mhm.
it's going to look different than what most people kind of have in their mind they should be doing once they get out of college.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. And if I can help with that, I volunteer.
Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely take you up on that offer.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has just been so much fun. I've learned a lot, and I could talk to you for hours and probably learn lots more. You're a wealth of information.
Well, thank you. And there's, when I talk about my business is built around educating people, that's really what my website is built around. So
What is
if
your
people
website
want to,
address?
yeah, if you go to strhomefinancing.com, you'll hear a little bit about our investment story. And then I put together videos that educate people on the different products that we use in this space. So there's a lot to cover today. We can't cover everything, but if people
We'll have
want
to have you
more
back again.
information,
We'll have you back.
yeah, absolutely. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. But
Yeah.
yeah, if people want a little bit more education on, the products, there's information there. And then, um, always happy to get on a phone call and visit with people, which there's that opportunity to schedule a call on my website.
Great, great. Well, at the bottom of this episode, I'm sure in the notes, we'll have all the details of how they can find you because we don't want that to be a secret.
No, absolutely.
You want people to
Let's
know about this. I'm going to tell a lot of people. So just, I can't wait to share this news with people and the audience. You all have great information. Don't keep it to yourselves. Please like and subscribe and share this podcast interview with all of your friends and family. Let's change the game for financially for everyone, right?
absolutely. We're a legacy. You and I talked about it. Is not something that we just leave behind. It's something that we're building, and we've got to take action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks again so much. We really appreciate your being here today. Thank you for tuning in to Crown and Keys, where wealth meets wisdom and legacy is built with intention. If today's episode inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, subscribe, and leave a review. And if you're ready to take your wealth strategy to the next level, visit crownandkeyspodcast.com to align your finances with your future. Until next time, stay aligned, stay empowered, and keep building your legacy. Your keys are in your hand. See you soon.